Hello everyone, and welcome to the first of many bag lectures. Today we're going to be looking at Monk and how to play the class overall. At least until Dawn Show comes out in like a month. This is a bit of a late slideshow for that one. Monk's a bit of an odd class in quite a few ways. You don't get a ranged attack like the other melees do. You have a faster global cooldown just by existing. And the biggest change compared to everyone else, you don't get combo bonuses. Rather than rewarding players for performing actions in a specific order, like how Dragoon and Reaper get their bonuses if you do the attacks in a specific order, you don't get a choice in the matter. You're rewarded by just continuing to play the game. Monk instead uses form-based combat, which allows you to use the next skills in your rotation. There are 3 forms: Coral form, Oppo form, and Raptor form. I've said those in the wrong order, but the general idea is that when you use an action in one form, it will enable you to use the actions in the next form. Oppo form is the odd one out of these 3 because you can already do Boot Shine and Dragon Kick whenever. What Oppo form does is it gives you bonus benefits when used. So if you use Boot Shine in Oppo form, it guarantees a critical hit. If you use Dragon Kick in Oppo form, it will guarantee that your next Boot Shine gets more damage. Shadow of the Destroyer, its AoE, also guarantees a crit. When it comes to single target rotation, it's a little bit complicated compared to others, but you can sort it through into 2 categories. There's AB frequency, where you use a skill every other time, and ABB frequency, where you only have to use one specific skill every 3rd rotation. Ideally, because of the way that this is organized, you only really have to worry about which of these 2 you're performing. And I know this doesn't explain a whole lot visually, but I promise we are going to get explanations in a moment. So for AB frequency, these are those skills you alternate every single time. Most of these skills that you use as Monk will follow AB frequency. There's only 2 skills that don't. The ones you're going to alternate with each other are Dragon Kick and Boot Shine, and Twin Snakes and True Strike. Like I mentioned earlier, Dragon Kick gives you a buff that makes Boot Shine more powerful, and Boot Shine guarantees a crit when you're in Oppo form, so you want to alternate those. Dragon Kick deals more damage by itself, but the guaranteed crit plays into Monk's entire identity very helpfully, so you do basically have to do that. Twin Snakes increases your damage dealt by 15% for 15 seconds. Obviously, that's a pretty significant buff. You want to keep that up all the time. True Strike deals more damage out the gate, though. Ideally, you want to have your True Strike buffed by Twin Snakes. You want everything buffed by Twin Snakes. Dealing more damage is good. If you time it so that your Twin Snakes buff is always recharged with your Dragon Kick buff, you can basically make it so instead of having to keep track of 2 timers, you only keep track of 1 timer. Now let's go over ABB frequency. These are skills that you really only have to do once in a little while. Demolish is the skill. It is our damage over time, dealing damage over 18 seconds. We want to keep that damage over time going, minimizing overuse. We don't want to use Demolish again if we just used it 1 rotation ago. Since at level 90, Monk has the fastest base cooldown of 2 seconds, after gear and skill speed and all that, it's a bit less than 6 seconds, so we can afford to use Demolish every 3rd rotation. So you're going to be wanting to do Demolish, Snap Punch again, Demolish, Snap Punch, Snap Punch. Another thing, these are our positionals. Because 2 out of the 3 times we're using Snap Punch, most of the time you will be on the side of the boss, on the flank. Every third rotation, you will move to the rear, because Demolish does a good amount of extra damage from the rear. We're talking 40 base damage to 100 base damage. Pretty significant, even amongst monk skills. Here is an example of our rotation. I say example, but this is actually the entire combo laid out right here. Opening with Dragon Kick into Twin Snakes, into Demolish, into Boot Shine, into True Strike, into Snap Punch, Dragon Kick, Twin Snakes, Snap Punch, Boot Shine, True Strike, Demolish. If you look closely, you'll actually notice that everything can easily kind of be grouped up into vertical groups. We've got these two here, which are the same. And the only things that really differentiate are our centers, where it goes 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2. This is what I mean when I say every other rotation do Dragon Kick into Twin Snakes, then Boot Shine into True Strike. If you just keep doing that and you don't think, oh, I need to press these two buttons, just go, okay, I'm doing this chunk. It makes a lot more sense, at least to me. Maybe to others it makes more sense to go one by one, but for me, I feel it simplifies the class a little bit more. Now, lower levels, obviously you don't have as quick a cooldown. It would be a little ridiculous if you could go into Sastasha and do 2-second cooldowns. Most of the time, you're going to be above 2 seconds. This right here is the lower level rotation, with notes for when you're below level 30 and level 50. Dragon Kick is your level 50 skill, so if you don't have it, just use Boot Shine. If you're below level 30, which isn't a whole lot of content, most content is level 30 or above, you don't have your damage over time, you'll just be doing Snap Punch instead. Because our cooldown is going to be shorter than 2 seconds, or longer than 2 seconds rather, if we do the ABB format, we'll actually let Demolish run out. And while this isn't exactly a bad thing, especially in the lower level content where it doesn't matter as much by comparison, you generally want to keep it going. So having that extra overlap isn't as much of a downside. Let's go over the job gauges of Monk. We've got the primary gauge, which is the chakra gauge. This is unlocked at level 15 and is filled using skills Meditation, and actually by getting critical hits. You have a passive as a monk that improves as you level up. Generally, it's an 80% chance whenever you crit to automatically fill a chakra, and once you reach a certain level, it becomes guaranteed. Whenever you crit, you get a chakra. If you're trying to fill your gauge in combat, you use the Meditation button. It's a 1-second global cooldown, and it adds 1. If you use it out of combat, it automatically fills the gauge fully. If you ever go into a dungeon and you see a monk press a button and they immediately just flare their arms out, that's them preparing that gauge. When it's full, Meditation becomes Steel Peak, or from level 54 onward, Forbidden Chakra. This is an off-global cooldown skill that deals a bunch of damage and consumes all 5 chakras. You want to use this skill basically whenever you can, because anytime you have full chakras, your crits aren't filling a gauge. From level 40 onwards, you get a line AoE version. You can use this against mob pulls, that's usually what ends up happening, but other than that, it's another button to keep in mind. I have it alongside my other AoE skills. I usually forget to mention these buttons in the first place because it's the chakra button. So you have a skill called Perfect Balance that goes into your second gauge that you unlock at level 60, the Beast Chakra gauge. This one, despite being simpler and having about the same visual pieces to it, is a good amount more complicated. Perfect Balance is a skill that you get early on that lets you use any 3 skills completely out of order. Theoretically, you could do Demolish 3 times if you wanted. You shouldn't, but you could. From level 60 onwards, this skill becomes notable for powering this new gauge. When using Perfect Balance, those 3 uses of skills will add chakras to this gauge. Coral Form will add Coral, Opo Opo will add Opo Opo ones, and Raptor will add Raptor. Depending on which of these you do, you will enable a new action through a button that we're about to go over now. Masterful Blitz. That's this button right here. It will change to these actions depending on what you've done. If you perform 3 actions with the same chakra, so let's say you did Boot Shine 3 times, or Dragon Kick, Boot Shine, that would open the Lunar Nadi upon using Elixir Field. This is an AoE that deals a bunch of damage. These are on cooldown, by the way, like global cooldown. If you perform 3 actions that have different chakras, say you do your regular 1, 2, 3 rotation of Boot Shine, Twin Snakes, and Snap Punch, then it will allow you to use Flint Strike and open the Solar Nadi. If you have both Nadi already open when you use Perfect Balance, performing any 3 actions at all will allow you to use Tornado Kick. This does the most damage out of your kit and still does AoE. If you look closely at the slides, and when I say look closely, I mean just look at the slide, you'll notice that I have notes for level 84 and 90 where these skills actually get upgraded. Flint Strike actually deals the same damage as Elixir Field, but Rising Phoenix does more damage. In this way, there are very few instances where you don't want to fill both Nadi at a given point, and you just want to use Rising Phoenix twice. Usually if the boss will die before that. But that's getting into some advanced monk gameplay, and that will depend on the fight you're doing anyways. If you do any other combo, say that there's only 2 different chakras, you will instead get Celestial Revolution. This does less damage than any other blitz, is only single target damage, but as a consolation prize, will open whatever Nadi is not opened. So if you had Lunar open but not Solar, it will open Solar. If you had Solar but not Lunar, it will open Lunar. That being said, try to avoid ever getting this combination. It's a DPS loss of a pretty significant margin. So when you're trying to get Lunar Blitz, that's your Elixir Field, you either want to perform Boot Shine into Dragon Kick into Boot Shine, or triple Boot Shine. The reason for this is that Boot Shine will automatically give us chakras because it's guaranteed to crit thanks to Perfect Balance. The Dragon Kick is what will give us that buff that makes, Boot Shine do more damage. This is preferred, and the optimal way is to in fact go Boot Shine, Dragon Kick, Boot Shine, but getting that 3rd chakra open is also quite helpful. And with Dawn Trail adding the ability to stockpile chakras above the 5, I predict more people will focus on this strategy going forward. When you're going for your Solar Blitz, though, I recommend just doing a 1-2-3 combo. Just act as if you aren't even in Perfect Balance for 3 skills. Just do what you would have done anyways. Is there technically an optimal way? Yes, but it's not that much of a DPS loss not to do it. And frankly, it's a little bit easier to think, okay, just keep playing Monk, rather than, okay, I've done this, what do I have to do next? This slide probably could have not existed, but I felt it was worth going over anyways. Let's go over the main off-global cooldowns exclusive to Monk, the Riddles. Riddle of Earth is something unlocked at level 64. It reduces the damage you take by 20% for 10 seconds, and will heal you for about 25 seconds if you get hit. This has a cooldown of 2 minutes. It's your main mitigation. This used to be a lot better, and they've nerfed it, I think, 3 different times in Endwalker alone. Riddle of Fire is our main damage increaser, increasing damage dealt by 15% for the next 20 seconds. This is unlocked from level 68 and is honestly one of the best damage increasing skills in the game, in my opinion. You use this every 60 seconds. Riddle of Wind is a bit of an odd one. You unlock it pretty late at level 72, and it reduces auto attack delay. It's recommended to just use this whenever it's available. That's more auto attack damage, which is more damage, and when using it with skills like Bloodbath, which heals you when you deal damage, you can regain quite a bit of health this way. Use this button indiscriminately. Brotherhood is an OGCD that deserves its own slide because of just how in-depth this one skill affects everything else. When you use this, your entire party gets a 5% damage increase for 15 seconds. Whenever a party member uses a weapon skill or casts a spell, you have a 20% chance to open a chakra without doing anything. From level 88 onwards, your skills will actually be guaranteed to open a chakra, no matter what skill it is. So you can just press buttons, get chakras, and use the forbidden chakra over and over and over again. And your party members can help with that. It's actually quite nice. Sure, it's a bit RNG based, but this is the only real RNG monk has, and it can cause you to go anywhere from getting 3 forbidden chakras out of this to 5. I think once in a Savage raid, I got 7 to happen because everybody was just using their skills so quickly. That actually technically is a bad thing because it gets in the way of doing other skills. So, I just talked about a lot of things. Here is where most of these line up together. Perfect Balance, Brotherhood, and Riddle of Fire are our burst windows. Brotherhood is a 2-minute cooldown skill that we use at the beginning of the fight and every 2 minutes afterwards. You also want to use Riddle of Fire at the same time, because that makes you deal 20% damage. I think it might be multiplicative instead of additive, but you deal more damage with both of them. We want to use Perfect Balance twice during this window, because we have both buffs happening. Since Brotherhood has a 2-minute cooldown, and Riddle of Fire only has 1 minute, halfway through the cooldown, you'll be using Riddle of Fire again, and using 1 Perfect Balance. This will conveniently empty the gauge, if you've done everything correctly and didn't accidentally double or anything. In this little example here, what I've done is I've shown a very simplified version of the timeline, where we open up with Brotherhood and Riddle of Fire, we do Perfect Balance, we do 3 skills, and then we do our Blitz. You might want to do Solar first, you might want to do Lunar first. It's up to you entirely. Again, another Perfect Balance into another Masterful Blitz. You either want to do the same one, so that way you're syncing up the later one to have Phantom Rush happen here. Or you're just going to use the other one, have both Nadias finished, so that way 60 seconds later, you can finish it all up here. No problem. This looks a little bit of a headache, but I promise after you do it for 1 or 2 fights, it makes a lot more sense, and it's really easy to get into the groove. So the AoE skills I've actually kind of intentionally not brought up. These skills are a lot easier to explain. You can just press the 3 buttons. There's 3 of them. Shadow of the Destroyer actually is an upgrade from another skill, but other than that, There's not a whole lot to discuss here. It's a pretty simple one. 4-point Fury notably gives you a 15% damage buff. The same buff that Twin Snakes does. Definitely worth looking into. There's 3 other skills. These are kind of the rarely used but worth pointing out. Form Shift is our opener. It lets you use any one skill as if you were in the proper form for it in the first place. We use this as the opener with Dragon Kick, so that way when we get to Boot Shine, it's buffed and deals more damage. This is on cooldown, which is why it doesn't get used anywhere else. Six-Sided Star is a high potency attack with 550 potency, but has an insanely high cooldown that applies to everything. Only really useful when you need to get out of melee range in the first place, or if the boss is about to die and you wouldn't get another skill out in the first place. And then there's Anatman. Don't use it. It's not even useful for the one thing it looks like it would be useful for, because most of the time when a boss has a transition phase, you get knocked out of this phase anyways. You automatically lose the benefit whenever you change your direction, move, or perform a weapon skill. Don't even set it on your hotbar. That's how useless the skill is. So I've just gone over every button Monk has personally, and now let's go over my thoughts on the class. Compared to other classes, it can be hard to understand, and it's notably different from everything else in a lot of ways. It can be a bit of a headache if you're going from any other DPS to this, or vice versa. But once you figure it out, it's pretty easy and relaxing to learn, with the opportunity for a high skill ceiling, to the point where your frame rate of your monitor actually starts mattering. I don't care that much about the class, I just think it's a fun class, but it is there. By level 50, your class identity is almost completely fleshed out, and you get your second gauge by level 60. It's quite a fun class to play as a result, and you don't have to adapt to new buttons showing up very often. There's basically no major changes to playstyle from level 70 onwards, but you can still adjust easily to level sync content by only losing 1 or 2 buttons. Everything from level 80 to level 90 is actually just upgrades to your currently existing buttons. As a result, it made Endwalker really easy. I didn't have to adjust any hotbars except for the entire reworking of Monk that happened during Endwalker. Alright, this has been a bag lecture on how to play Monk. Shortly after this, I plan on making a video showcasing what all of this actually means in practice rather than just in theory. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave some in the comments, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.